So this is a big state. 1 in every 7 Americans lives in California. The Republican Party here used to have governors, senators. Now you're kind of in a pretty low point. What are the building blocks for the California Republican Party to be competitive?
Oh, gosh. I think, first of all, 1 in 7, that's also like 1 in 7 people that live in California are Republicans. So they have a long ways to go. However, the party made some decent inroads last November. Not anything to write home about, but slight movement in the right direction. I think it's finding somebody extraordinary. It's kind of like finding a Barack Obama that the country found or the Democratic Party found a few years ago. Somebody that has money, that's an incredible candidate. A case would be Arnold Schwarzenegger. He was somebody else that was already famous, came in and sucked the wind and became was a Republican.
But didn't bring the party back at all.
No, but what was the first thing he did? He hired a Democrat chief of staff and moved in that direction. But someone that lives it and breathes it, but is so charming and dynamic that the state just... I think other than that, it's a 50-year slog.
But Bill, I grew up in the state, and like Mark said, I remember this was a state where, Ronald Reagan came from this state. A lot of great Republican talent came from this state. Is this not a question that's not about personality so much as it is about demographics, that the state has changed so much that it's just inhospitable to Republicans, at least in any current incarnation of the Republican Party?
I moved out here after the 1988 campaign. And at that point, Republicans were getting roughly 40% of the Latino vote in elections. We went through the 90s with a lot of discussion of the immigration issue, and then Proposition 187, which was on the ballot in 1994, which helped re-elect Pete Wilson because it influenced turnout heavily with angry white voters.
Yep.
But it destroyed the Republican Party's future in California. And as a consequence, they haven't come back, and the demographics get worse.
If Jeb Bush runs a flawless campaign and talks about immigration, talks about education reform, talks about equal opportunity, could he, I'm not saying he'd win California, could he come out here and compete?
Well, I think it would be tough. I think the truth is that President Bush, his brother, President Bush, ended up being really unpopular here. The war was unpopular here. I mean, he'd really have to do something quite extraordinary to become a viable candidate who could compete in California.
My prediction is they won't spend a dollar.
Right. Is there any Republican candidate among the potential Republicans who we know of now that might run? Is there any Republican who could be even remotely competitive here?
I don't think so.
I don't think any of the presidentials that we know anything about could now.
They won't come here.
No.
They won't play.
So it used to be the case that political trends, a lot of political trends started in California and moved east. What's one thing going on in this state right now that you think represents kind of the wave of the future for the politics of other states?
I think the one thing that's happened to the Republican Party here, and it's probably happening on the flip side to the Democratic Party in the South, they're becoming less of an actual political party and more of an interest group. And in our electoral process, our local elections are nonpartisan, and we have this top 2 primary system where candidates from all parties run at the same time in the primary. A lot of times the Republicans are using their influence to say, I'm not going to vote for this hopeless Republican. I'm going to hold my nose and figure out which one of these Democrats I want to vote for. So I think we see that somewhat in the legislative activity, in the legislature. Some of the Republicans are figuring out, if I want to participate in the governing process, I have got to cut deals with Democrats, whether it's Jerry Brown or the Democratic legislative leadership.
It's possible that will move east, but I would think, I love it here. You were born here. There's not much here politically you would want to move east if you're the East. Right. Money, this is a wacky place. Great place to live, but not a great place to be on my side of the political spectrum.
Minute left. You're from South Carolina originally. You're from Oklahoma originally. Are you more a Southerner or Southern Californian at this point?
Oh, I'm still a Southerner, in many, many ways, but I can't imagine going back to South Carolina and playing politics. I would be irrelevant.
You'd be eaten alive.
Yeah.
How about you, Oklahoma or Hollywood?
Politically, here, this is home. I've been here since '85, but listen to my voice. I mean, I'm Oklahoma through and through. My whole family's back there. 50-50.
I think it does give us an interesting perspective on politics here
That's
that
true.
a lot of people don't have. But you know, here people tend to be raised in lanes. You know, they grow up in some community, or they grow up in north, south, whatnot. I think both of us are agnostic about all the wars they go through politically here.
Totally correct.